Hello, good morning. Edgardo Sambo here. And this time we are now on episode number 32. And the topic for today would be about hell. Now, this topic is very lengthy. So I am going to divide this into two parts. And this is now part 1. First of all, let us try to find out what the word hell means. In the Merriam-Webster dictionary, hell is being defined as, number 1, a nether. Nether means situated down or below or lower. So number 1, a nether world in which the dead continue to exist. Number 2 definition, Hades. Number 3 definition, the nether realm of the devil and the demons in which condemned people suffer everlasting punishment. And number 4, a place or state of misery, torment, or wickedness. And number 5, a place or state of turmoil or destruction. There are other definitions of hell, but let me confine our definitions to the spiritual realm. Many churches, congregations, religions, etc., are teaching that there are now human beings in hell suffering extremely, sufferings which are being inflicted by demons, and these humans are burning under the intense heat of the fire which are engulfing the whole area of hell. This fire in hell is a literal fire, just like the fire we have on earth. But these claims are false. There are no humans in hell or heaven yet, nor are there demons in hell yet. What will the demons do in hell if they don't have any customers to punish? Please read my track entitled After Death, Are There Humans in Heaven or Hell Now? To understand this more fully, let me state that when humans are thrown to hell or sent to heaven, they will occupy hell or heaven with a human body, together with their soul and spirit. That means their bodies have been resurrected, and their resurrection will only happen during the second coming of Jesus Christ. And this second coming of Christ will happen still in the future. How can humans be sent to hell when their bodies have not been resurrected yet? If it is true that there are now humans in hell, then is it only the spirit of humans that are in hell? How can a literal spirit be affected by a literal fire? No way! These spirits will only laugh at the fire engulfing them. And if it is true that there are now humans in hell, this will not be fair for those humans who had died earlier, like 6,000 years ago. They had been suffering already for 6,000 years, while the other humans are just starting to suffer the punishment in hell. Are you getting confused? Let me continue. and other congregations, churches, religions, etc., 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 they are teaching that hell is situated under the earth, that this is where unrighteous humans will suffer this punishment for eternity. Eternity means forever and ever. If hell is on earth and hell is forever and ever, that means this earth will also remain forever and ever too. Is this premise true? The answer is a big no, because this earth will vanish during the last judgment, and it will be replaced with a new earth. Then if this old earth had vanished, it means hell will also vanish. Then hell will not be forever and ever. Please read my tracts entitled The Third Heaven and Had God Already Hurled Satan and His Cohorts to earth? So that means to say, hell is not inside the earth. Because in the Bible, hell had been defined as forever and ever. And if hell is inside the earth, hell will not be forever and ever. Why? Because after the last judgment, the planet Earth will disappear. And when the planet Earth had disappeared, that means to say, hell will also disappear. And that means to say, hell will not be forever and ever. What is the meaning of the word hell based on the Bible? There are 4 meanings of the word hell in the Bible. In the Old Testament, the word hell stands for the Hebrew word Sheol, which means grave. In the New Testament, when the word hell is mentioned, this may mean Tartarus, Gehenna, or Hades. In the book of 2 Peter, chapter 2, verse 4, it states, "For if God spared not the angels that sinned, but cast them down to hell," that means to say Tartarus, "and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved unto judgment." This version is from the King James Version Bible. Let us find out what the Greek translation will say. As you would remember, the New Testament was written in the Greek language. In the book of 2 Peter, chapter 2, verse 4, this is now in the Greek version. It states, "If indeed God, the angels having sinned, not spared, but in chains of gloomy darkness, having cast them to the deepest abyss, delivered them for judgment, being kept." As you would notice, in the King James Version, the word hell was used, but in the Greek translation, the words used were deepest abyss. Let us ask the Merriam-Webster dictionary for the meaning of the word abyss. It says, "an immeasurably deep gulf or great space, or the bottomless gulf or pit." And the verse states that they were placed in chains of gloomy darkness in the abyss. gloomy darkness, that means it was a dark place where the brightness of fire or light was not in existence. Then there's no fire in this abyss, while hell is being defined as a place of fire. That means when the word hell was used in this verse, this is not a place of fire. That is why the word Tartarus was used. Tartarus means a section of Hades reserved for punishment of the wicked. There was no fire mentioned in this Tartarus. Satan and his cohorts were imprisoned in this Tartarus, waiting for their punishment. Satan and his cohorts were thrown into this place of gloomy darkness and were chained, waiting for their punishment. This place was not the literal hell. The question is, had this happened already? The answer is a big no. This will happen in the future. In fact, before the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ here on earth. Please read my tract, Third Heaven, and had God already cast Satan and his cohorts to earth. So in these verses, it is very clear that when Satan and his cohorts were thrown in Tartarus, this Tartarus was not hell, because Tartarus was a certain part in Hades. And these demons being thrown in Tartarus had not yet happened. This will only happen before the 1,000-year reign of Christ will start. That means to say there are no demons or humans still in hell up to this point in time. Anyway, let me support this with the following verse. In the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verses 1 to 4, it states, "And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loose a little season." Take note that Satan and his cohorts will be chained for 1,000 years and will not be able to tempt humans. After the 1,000-year reign of Christ here on earth, he will be loose for a short time. Take note that this place is not the literal hell. This incident will happen after Satan and his cohorts had waged war in heaven and lost, and because of this, they were imprisoned in the bottomless pit or abyss. This casting away of Satan and his cohorts to the bottomless pit will happen before the 1,000-year reign of Christ here on earth. That means to say, Satan and his cohorts are not still in hell. There are still no inhabitants in hell yet up to this point in time. No humans in hell, no demons on hell yet. In the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 22, it states, "But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire or Gehenna." In the previous verse, I had stated that hell was defined as Tartarus or a bottomless pit. But in this verse, in the book of Matthew chapter 5, verse 22, hell was defined as Gehenna. Now let us try to find out what the word Gehenna means. Raka is a word of defamatory utterance. Bible scholars and theologians had agreed that this word Gehenna was based on the valley of Hinnom, south of Jerusalem, where trash and dead animals were burned. Jesus used this a few times, like in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 29 to 30, to confirm that there will be a real fire where the lost or unrighteous humans will be cast into. When will this happen? Will the unrighteous humans, when they die, go straight to this hellfire after death? The answer is a big no. When humans die, their bodies will be buried 6 feet under the ground and will wait for judgment on the last judgment. Once found guilty on the last judgment, these humans who had already been resurrected with their immortal bodies together with their souls and spirits will be thrown into the lake of fire. So this Gehenna then is actually the lake of fire. In this verse, hellfire is actually the lake of fire. Please read my tract entitled After Death. Judgment of humans and devils will only be done during the last judgment, and that is still in the future. In this paragraph, I had mentioned that hell is the lake of fire, and the lake of fire is hell. Why is this so? If hell is different from the lake of fire, and hell will only be occupied by demons and unrighteous people after the last judgment, and the lake of fire will also be occupied by unrighteous people and by demons after the last judgment, then there will be 2 places that these humans and demons will be sent to. And these 2 places would be hell and the lake of fire. Hell is the place of fire. The lake of fire is a place of fire. So, hell and the lake of fire is a place where there's fire. And after the last judgment, if it is true that hell is different from the lake of fire, then God the Father will throw these unrighteous people and the demons into hell and into the lake of fire. It would not be logical anymore. Why God will throw these humans and devils into hell and into the lake of fire, two different places which is composed of fire? No way. It will be out of logic. So that means to say, hell and the lake of fire is one and the same place, because the other apostles had defined this place of fire as hell, while John, Apostle John, on the book of Revelation, had defined this place of fire as the lake of fire, which means to say that hell is also the lake of fire, and the lake of fire is also hell. I hope I had made myself clear when I had stated that hell and the lake of fire is one and the same place. Let me continue, please. In the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 29 to 30, it states, "And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell or Gehenna. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off, and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not thy whole body should be cast into hell or Gehenna." As you would notice, hell here was defined as Gehenna. These unrighteous humans will only be judged on the last judgment, and they will be thrown into hell, or what the Bible says, the lake of fire. As you would notice, the whole body, which was resurrected with its soul and spirit, will be thrown into the lake of fire. And this lake of fire is not in earth, because before the unrighteous humans are thrown into the lake of fire, the old earth had already vanished. So as you would notice, every time the word hell, a place of fire, was mentioned, the word Gehenna was being used. So when the word Gehenna was used, that means to say this is hell or the lake of fire. In the book of Matthew, chapter 13, verses 40 to 42, it states, "As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of the world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth." The tares here are the unrighteous humans. Jesus calls it the furnace of fire. This will happen at the end of the world during the last judgment, and they will be thrown into the lake of fire. To prove the existence of the lake of fire, please follow the next verses. In the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 10, it states, and the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophets are and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever. This will happen after the last judgment, when Satan and his cohorts and the unrighteous humans were judged and were thrown into the lake of fire or hell. As you would notice, this verse had stated that Satan and his cohorts will be thrown into the lake of fire. It did not say will be thrown into hell, but it said will be thrown into the lake of fire, because the book of Revelation was written by Apostle John. And in the book of Revelation, when he meant hell, John mentioned the word lake of fire. That means to say, hell and the lake of fire is one and the same place. In the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 15, it states, "And whosoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire." These unrighteous humans were not written in the book of life, since they were habitual sinners, and they were thrown into the lake of fire after they were judged on the last judgment. Let us now take a look at the third meaning of hell in the New Testament, which is the word Hades. In the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 14, it states, "And death and hell, or Hades, were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death." So if hell, as mentioned in this verse, is the literal hell with fire in it, will it still be thrown into the lake of fire when hell itself is fire? It will not be logical. Fire being thrown into fire does not make sense. Some congregations will teach that hellfire will be thrown into the lake of fire, so that the unrighteous humans will suffer more, since the fire in the lake of fire is hotter than the fire in hell. So the word hell here means Hades, or the grave. It means death and the graves were thrown into the lake of fire. I will cut this part 1 on this verse, the book of Revelation chapter 20 verse 14, because this chapter is very lengthy. Now let me try to expound more on this subject matter, hell. As you would notice in the Bible, every time hell was mentioned, it means 3 different meanings. The first time hell was mentioned, hell was meant by the word Tartarus, or a bottomless pit, or a bottomless abyss. So this Tartarus, or bottomless abyss, does not mean that hell was the place of fire. It was only mentioned as Tartarus because this bottomless pit, this bottomless pit is where Satan and his cohorts were thrown before the 1,000-year reign of Christ will start. And this bottomless pit or abyss has no fire in it yet. And the second time the word hell was used, it was meant to be the word Gehenna. Now this word Gehenna was meant to be the word hell itself, the place of fire. So Gehenna and hell is one and the same meaning. When the Bible says hellfire, it means Gehenna. Hellfire, Gehenna, or the lake of fire. If Gehenna was stating that it was hell, the place of fire, then Gehenna is also the lake of fire, since the lake of fire is hell, and hell is the lake of fire, and the lake of fire is considered as Gehenna. And the third instance where the word hell was used was meant to be the word Hades, or the grave. So as you would notice, when the Bible states hell, it could either mean Tartarus, or the bottomless pit, or abyss, or it could either mean Gehenna, or the lake of fire, or it could either mean Hades, or the grave. On part 2 of this topic, hell, I'm going to expand more on this Tartarus, Gehenna, and Hades. But please take note, on this part 1 of this topic, hell, I had proven that hell is the lake of fire, and the lake of fire is hell. There are some leaders of churches that would teach that their members that hell is different from the lake of fire, and they had stated that there are now demons in hell and there are now human beings in hell. And these demons and human beings in hell, which had now been suffering since 6,000 years ago, will be thrown into the lake of fire after the last judgment, because this pastor said that the fire in hell is not so hot. That's why these unrighteous humans and these demons, after the last judgment, will be thrown into the lake of fire, because the lake of fire is hotter than the fires in hell. If that is the right logic, I could surmise, or I could conclude, that God the Father had no mercy. Imagine after being thrown into fire, because the lake of fire is hotter than hell, it would be out of logic. That means to say, the lake of fire and hell is one and the same place. So do not be confused, my fellow Bible-believing Christians. Do not think that hell is a different place from the lake of fire, and the lake of fire is a different place from the word hell. In part 2 of this topic, hell, I'm going to expound more on this topic, why hell and the lake of fire is one and the same place. So make sure, when you had viewed this video, part 1 of hell, do not forget to view part 2 of this video, so that you could get the exact meaning of what I am trying to state or to say. And let it make me clear that there are no devils in hell yet, and there are no humans in hell yet. Do not believe those pictures depicting that there are demons in hell holding pitchforks, and these demons have two horns on their foreheads, punishing those unrighteous humans in hell. How can there be humans in hell when their bodies have not been resurrected yet? Their bodies will only be resurrected upon the second coming of Christ and under the last judgment. That means to say, humans will only be thrown into hell or the lake of fire when their bodies had been resurrected. Humans will not be thrown into the lake of fire or hell with their spirit and souls alone, because their spirit will only laugh at the fire in hell, because the fire in hell is a literal fire, and a literal fire will never harm a spirit or a soul. That's why before humans could be thrown into hell or the lake of fire, their bodies will be resurrected. Their soul and spirit will combine with their physical bodies. And these three components, the resurrected body, spirit, and soul, which had combined themselves again, will be thrown into the lake of fire. And when these had been thrown into the lake of fire, these immortal bodies could feel the heat of the fires in hell. But the problem is, these bodies will never perish. These bodies will never die anymore, because these bodies will be immortal bodies, will be uncorruptible bodies. And so these punishments will go on forever and ever without end, without these unrighteous humans dying. Why? Because their bodies are now non-perishable and immortal. So this will only happen. Their bodies will be thrown into the lake of fire or hell after they have been judged on the last judgment. That means to say, hell will only be occupied by demons and devils and Satan, and hell will only be occupied by unrighteous humans after they had been judged under the last judgment. And this did not happen yet. So, my fellow Bible-believing Christians, if pastors and teachers of congregations or churches will tell you that there are now humans in hell, there are now demons in hell, tell them they are mistaken. Tell them that what they are teaching are not biblical. Tell them that what they are teaching are false and erroneous and against the doctrines of Christ. It is very clear then that hell is the lake of fire. And there's still no humans or demons in hell or the lake of fire. This place of torment will only be inhabited after the last judgment. So my fellow Bible-believing Christians, I am hoping that you had understand what I'm trying to say. After viewing this video, please, I would advise you to view part 2 of this video hell, because unless you view the second part of this video, you will not understand fully what I had been trying to explain on this episode number 32. I will be broadcasting 2 weeks again from now, and I hope that you will be there to view it again. And if you would like to view my other episodes, just go to YouTube and press the word search and type my name, Edgardo Sambo, and YouTube would furnish you all my other episodes from episodes number 1 up to episode number 32. And if you would like to subscribe, please subscribe and don't forget to ring the notification bell. I would be seeing you once more after 2 weeks to present to you part 2 of this episode. May God bless us all, and may God enlighten our minds and our hearts so that we could understand episode number 32 fully and without doubting it. In the meantime, I could say bye-bye and see you after 2 weeks. Thank you.